Hey there, Adam here with you. Another video to tell you all about Armored Half, take you behind the scenes. We have with us here artist Phillip Sevy, friend of the podcast, been on many times, who was able to contribute to Armored Half. Phil, how you doing?
Doing all right. How about you?
Great. Let me ask you this just to start. When we reached out and we said, hey, we're publishing a half comic, what was your reaction?
Oh, I mean, I think it was. I was like, it was a perfect idea, and it fits really kind of in line with the approach and subject matter of the podcast. So I was like, yep, that lines up perfectly.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it just feels like, why aren't there more of these out there? So we were happy to bring it back and give that hit of nostalgia to everybody. So what we gave to you though was an interesting assignment. A lot of people remember for many years in Wizard Magazine, they had a feature called Last Man Standing. They would pit two comic book characters, usually that you wouldn't imagine ever having a crossover. Sometimes it was just pop culture characters. They would battle it out. Wizard would write a funny little story to go along with it, give you all their stats, and then tell you who they thought would win. Phil, were you a fan of these Last Man Standing features?
I mean, yeah, they were fun, and it was always fun to see artists illustrate characters that maybe they weren't consistently or regularly doing in their career. So I mean, yeah, it was just a fun little thing, and I think I think I fall on the side of Michael sometimes, where he's like, I don't understand. There's the the story they've created doesn't really make any sense consistently with the characters. It just feels like whoever they felt was cooler at the moment, but it was fine and it was fun.
Yeah, definitely something where they're just goofing around, and it was what the fanboy dream, always imagining, oh, this guy could beat this guy or whatever. So
Yeah.
we decided we wanted to bring that back with a little bit of an armored universe spin, and we decided to create Last Ghost Standing. And so we had you create some original art. We kind of nominated a few ghosts. We were going back and forth. Who are the ghosts that could be battling Sir William, the main, ghost former knight who inhabited the armor that the main character of Armored Andy wears? And so I wanted to kind of go through with you here just your process as we were discussing what was going to happen there and then to the final
So,
product.
as an artist, whenever I get an assignment, I will do a couple rough sketches just to walk the client through some ideas so they can hopefully find what they like. The goal is to give them a couple options and hopefully each one of those options will be something that works. So I think you guys sent me the initial write up of Sir William facing off against, and we went through some of the characters and we picked up like Ghost from the Dark Horse series or the Marvel character Ghost going to kind of the classic look instead of the MCU. And you kind of the brief the story that'll be in the half issue. You send it along with it. So I was looking at like, okay, this happens and then this happens and then that happens, and what's a way to try and encapsulate all of those ideas into one single image. Single images, be it like a splash page or a cover or an illustration like this, you're always trying to find a way to how do I distill a series of events into something singular. So with that initial approach, these were the sketches that I sent over, these four. And one of the things about The Last Man Standing, and I found some original art just online, and the proportions and the ratio of the image is different from a standard comic page. Comic pages are really tall, whereas all the Last Man Standing stuff was all done in a square format. So I found some original art and I was able to get the dimensions off that. But after we kind of went through this first round of Ghost facing off against Sir William and other ghosts, and I kind of tried to color code them slightly so it was clear. Because as you can see, like these are not super detailed, clean images. They're just rough, quick sketches to get the idea across. And we went back and realized, like, okay, some of what we're doing is maybe trying too literally to interpret the story into an image. And it's causing like the focus to shift away from Sir William and putting it more on Dark Horse Ghost. So we went back to the drawing board and did a second round of layouts. And at this point, I just did two of them. And I can zoom in a little bit here to see. The first one here is got Sir William up ahead. You've got the two ghosts behind and various comic books in the basement of a shop. And then the third one, I basically just switched the perspective or the angle of the camera around behind the two ghosts with Sir William up. Each of them, and this is something I've learned and I've started to really notice working with my current editor on X-Men, is if you have characters in a scene, do your best to have their faces toward the camera. Because, depending on where I orient the camera, sometimes I'll put it behind a character's head. But if they're speaking or if they're a focal point, my editor's like, can you turn their face around? And I was like, It's a fairly good point. So we ended up settling on image E here, which is Sir William in the forefront and the ghosts coming in behind him. And there was some other stuff along the way you asked me to add in. So let me just walk you through kind of where I went after that. Yeah, so I took kind of the sketch, I blew it up, the layout thumbnail, I blew it up to full size. I threw in some perspective grid layers, lines over the top, just to make sure as I'm drawing the background, it's falling in line with this down shot that I had approached. And then from there, I would just draw pencils over the top. So that was kind of my initial pencils. And I think it was somewhere around here I sent it to you guys just to make sure, like, is this still looking all right? You wanted me to add Todd McFarlane in the background and then DC's Dead Man as well. And that one worked. And from there, I think I just put a quick little, I also will do another layer, just trying to play with my lighting to be like, okay, where are things going to fall for shadows? So I can start to figure out, make sure compositionally that works. And then when I went to go move forward, let's see here. What layer is this one? Okay, there we go. As I started to move forward, this was kind of the next round of pencils that I did. I had Ghost here. I had a little bit more detail in here, and then you guys gave me the thumbs up, and I went to jump into inks and realized, like, the Ghost that I had, it wasn't quite working. The face wasn't right. Some of the body stuff I didn't really enjoy, so I spent a bit more time reworking everything. And that led a little bit of reworking of Marvel Ghost. That led to some reworking of Dead Man's figure and arm, and then that's kind of what I ended up with Ghost. In the end, let me turn her guns on. I did her guns on a separate layer. Let's see, is this one? There we are. Just used a quick 3D model to get the guns looking right. But then that was kind of where I landed with the pencils. Just once I was a little bit happier with how everything turned out. So from there, I basically just dropped the opacity of my pencils down a ton and then ink over the top of them. So as I drop the opacity here, kind of show you where my inks ended up. And then let me turn my background on. Sometimes I will ink my background on a separate layer, just so it makes it easy to make changes along the way. And then this is my copy of ink, so I can show you what it looked like there. So yeah, that's about where my inks ended up over the course of everything. You can kind of zoom in and see. And there's different texture brushes. I did this one digitally. I do a lot of my work digitally these days, though I'll occasionally do traditional stuff. Just kind of zooming around this page. So some of it's inked, some of it's texture brushed, some of it's just a big combination of the two. One of the things I did really early on from the beginning, and it's on this layer here, is, let me change the color on this so you can see it a little bit better. But looking at the image, I'm throwing down a bunch of lines sent compositionally to figure out where are my 5 main focal points. So generally, if you divide an image into thirds, you have intersections where the thirds hit, which is these 4 right here. And then I will figure out where's the center point. And then I'm just trying to, on your compositional thirds is where the strongest points, where your eye will usually draw. And then center frame focus is another high point. And then kind of using diagonal lines bisecting in various spots. I'm trying to see, like, make sure the lines of the characters are following along. And Andrew Loomis talks a lot about this in some of his books over the years. But so you'll see, like, this diagonal line essentially of Todd's arm going down towards Ghost, Ghost's body pointed down towards Sir William, bottom Ghost here pointed up. Everything is kind of bouncing around along these compositional lines, just trying to make things look as strong as possible. And it's kind of where, I want to make sure people's eyes stay in the frame of what's going on. Even Sir William's shoulder is kind of following along this diagonal here, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of where I was got to with my inks. Since I'm coloring myself here on this one, I was actually basically drawing the outline of the characters and then filling the flat colors in on a separate layer at the same time. So it's a little bit of a slower approach, but it also saves me time once I get to coloring, if I'm coloring myself, to kind of like piecemeal. So once I have the basic block colors in, which is what we call flat, so I'll show you that here, it becomes easier to then add detail and then render on top. So this is what my flats layer looked like underneath everything. So I'm just dropping solid colors in to give me a base to start. And these were not exactly the colors I dropped in initially. It's just get me something in there so that I can adjust it as my art goes on. So let me start to pull up some of what all this looked like in the end. So one thing I did for like Ghost, you'll notice if you get in really close, I turned all the lines on her form like a purple. So it's called a color hold, where you take the lines and change them something other than black. Sir William's got a dark green. I think those were the most, and then Dead Man's got kind of like a blue gray. So because they are ghostly forms, I didn't want like solid black lines on them. I wanted some lines that look like they're a little bit transparent without necessarily making them see through. Um, yeah, so that's kind of the basics here, and I'll just kind of walk through each of my levels from here. I threw a texture over the background just to give it a little bit of a kind of a grunge, dirty on the ground and background, just to give it a little bit of that. Um, what I did, I added some classic 90s comics around that were on the floor, and I just took images from regular stuff and I pixelated them, I blurred them. I didn't want to worry
Yeah.
about getting into too much trouble, but you also kind of know what it is if you squint and look really close. I added just kind of a unifying color here to kind of put everything in the same group. I added a layer of shadows on all the figures on the ground. Sir William didn't really have any shadows, and I didn't think it was necessary. Um, Added just kind of a second. I don't even think I ended up adding any secondary shadows. My first round was good enough. Then I threw highlights on everything. This is just there's a whole bunch of coloring jargon I could get into, but that's basically what it is. I'm using Sir William kind of as the light source, so everything's got a little bit of a green hue, and then kind of a bounce light is orange, which is a complementary color, which is color theory and stuff like that. Then I kind of threw another unifying thing over the top of everything, so just in case I went too far, too many colors out, again, trying to bring everything back to a consistent look. And then I added just some glow effects here on Sir William, added a little bit of glow on Ghost and a little bit of glow on Deadman because of their spectral forms, added a couple more little sparkles off Ghost's gun, and then I think that's it. I think these other layers are just reference things I threw in there. Every now and then when I'm coloring, I will turn on just a layer that turns everything black and white just to make sure my values balance out so that like the value of the ground or ghost isn't too far different. You just don't want things flat. You want things high contrast and things to stand out. So like I went back in and I adjusted the value on Todd McFarlane's shirt and pants here because they were too similar to the ground behind him. And same thing with these two ghosts, same thing with Sir William. There was parts of him I made a little bit darker, parts of him I made a little bit brighter. So Ghost and him weren't exactly the same shade of gray and white. So yeah, that's kind of the approach there. That's about, I think, what our finished image ended up looking like that we decided on and sent over. So that is like I don't know, a little bit of a long-winded approach, but also a summary of however many hours I spent on it over a couple of days.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think for a lot of us who are not artists and we just take for granted how awesome this image looks, and you're considering every angle, every light source, every, gradation of color and all those things. I mean, the final product, Mike and I were just blown away. We were just like, wow, this is
Oh,
like
good.
so amazing because it sets the scene and the tone in every way. When people finally get a chance to check out the story that goes along with this will all make sense even more, and we're hoping you guys get some chuckles out of that as well. But Phil,
Yeah.
we appreciate all the attention to detail and everything you put in there. How do you feel about the final product?
No, I like it. I think I wouldn't say there was battling or fights along the way, but there's, with that many characters and that much going on, there's a lot to balance out. So I think at one point I sent it to you, probably about 80, 85% done with the colors. And you guys were like, that looks awesome. And I'm like, I'm just going to let it sit for a day. And I didn't. I didn't look at it for, 12, 15 hours. And then when I came back, I was like, okay, I've got a little bit of a fresh sense of eyes. What is working? What still needs some massaging? And I did a little bit of tweaks, not a ton, but there were some things like knocking back effects that were a little bit too, they were fighting the Sir William too much. So toned a few things down, shifted a few things around, and then kind of finalized the files after that. So yeah, I'm happy with how it came out. It was I wouldn't say it was like a super difficult piece, but it's complicated and it takes a little bit of time, and I want to make sure it's balanced. There were things like I colored Sir William in one way entirely, and then as I sat back and looked at it, I was like, "Oh, that's garbage," and I deleted it and started over from scratch. So that happens, and I love to color myself. I don't color myself regularly, so every time I get the opportunity to, it's like, okay, let me remember how to do this. And sometimes it's do something, delete it, do something, delete it until you kind of find the groove for what the image looks for.
Well, we definitely think you found it. And when people see the final 2-page spread here, we got the art, we got the story. and it's going to take them back. And you've definitely delivered on that for them. So
Oh, thanks.
again, Phil, thank you so much for being a part of Armored Half. And we hope that all of you who have gotten your copy are enjoying it. Those who have not, there's still a few days left. So make sure that you jump on there, go over to Kickstarter, and secure your copy today. But thank you so much. And hey, we'll be back with more updates.